SDK is pretty easy to work with. But I'm also pretty fond of a package called Rebase by a guy named Tyler McGinnis, who does a lot of stuff in the React world. Here's a link to that if you want to read up on it. A Relay-inspired library for building React.js plus Firebase applications. Well, I don't know what Relay is, but it sounds neat. Oh, look, there's even a big friendly bear. React.js makes managing state easy to reason about. Hopefully you agree by now. Firebase makes persisting your data easy to implement. Rebase, this package, inspired by Relay, combines the benefit of React and Firebase by allowing each component to specify its own data dependency. Forget about your data persistence and focus on what really matters, your application's state. So the idea behind Rebase is you just manage state, and it's just going to keep things in sync with your database automatically without you having to worry about it. So all we have to do is do some initial setup. So we need to add Rebase to our project. So in the directory where your project lives, if you're using yarn, yarn add re-base, not rebase without the dash. You need that in there. That is a totally different package. Re-base. If you're using npm, that would be npm install re-base. And when we run yarn add or npm install, it does two things. It downloads that package and puts it in the node modules folder, and it adds it to the list of dependencies in package.json. So if we look at package.json, now under dependencies, we should see re-base 3.0.2. Yeah. Yarn add rebase or npm install rebase. Remember the dash. So back in Firebase, if we click back on Overview, we skipped over this to go poking around. Back in Overview, it has some stuff for us to get started. Add Firebase to your iOS app or Android app, or add Firebase to your web app. That's what we want to do. So go ahead and click that. And it gives you a little code snippet to put in. Now, we're not going to put exactly this snippet, but we are going to use this config object. We're not using script tags. We're using ES6 modules with import and export and stuff. And we're not using var, we're using let. And we're never going to use this config object again, so what I'm going to do is call initialize app and just pass in this object. So for the moment, just copy this object to your clipboard from the opening curly brace to the closing curly brace. And then create a new file in your project for your Firebase configuration. And I'm going to name it base.js lowercase b. This is not a component. It's just a JavaScript file, so I'm not going to capitalize the name. And we're going to need to import rebase from rebase. So import rebase from rebase. And you understand when we don't put a path in front of that, like /, it's going to look in node modules. It looks in node modules by default. So import rebase from re-base. Let's import Firebase from Firebase/app. Now we didn't explicitly add Firebase to our dependencies, but rebase has it as a dependency itself. So we got it for free, basically. npm or yarn took care of that. And we'll import database from Firebase/database. Then I'm going to make an app variable, const lowercase a app. And like it shows here, I'm going to call firebase.initializeApp. Firebase.initializeApp. Firebase is available because we imported it. And I'm going to paste in that configuration. So this is going to be different for everybody. It'll have your API key, your auth domain, your database URL, etc. So this isn't something that we want to commit to our Git repository. So we're going to make sure we add this to gitignore. Go ahead and pop over to gitignore, and at the bottom just add base.js. And then we won't accidentally commit this. And when we're done configuring this, we'll add an example file so people have something to go by so that they know they have to do this. All right, so having created that app variable, we now need a reference to the database. So I'm going to make a variable called db, and I'm going to use this database that we imported from Firebase database. And that is a function. And we'll pass this app object into it. And we have a reference to our database. And once we have that, then if we look at the rebase docs, we need to call rebase.createClass, passing in that DB. So all this stuff is just the Firebase SDK. This last line is using rebase to create a class that we're going to use somewhere else. So the result of this create class should be our export. So let's export default rebase.createClass. And we're done with this file for right now. So I'm going to go ahead, before I forget, and copy this file. And call the copy base.example.js. And in base.example.js, I'm going to take out all of my secret stuff. And if we do a git status right now, you'll see base.example.js is an untracked file, but it has no mention of base.js. Git is completely ignoring it because it's in that file. So that way we won't accidentally commit our personal secrets. Don't put things like passwords and API keys in your repositories. All right, but the real base.js, well, you know what? We should also probably, in our README, say something about this. So at the top of the README, I'm going to put some setup instructions because I want someone else to have some prayer of using this thing. And I'm going to say copy base.example.js to base.js and add the appropriate configuration for your Firebase application. So that's the kind of thing you should do. If your project doesn't just run, if someone downloads it, you should put some instructions in there for what they need to do to get it to run. All right, so we have base.js. go ahead and commit this much, add rebase for Firebase syncing, even though we are not yet syncing.